And please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you very much for being here today. We have a quorum, and so we will only be having public comment on the items that will be on the agenda. It's not everything that's not, it's only the things that are today. And so I think we're ready to start then with item 3 on the consent agenda, unless someone wants to pull it, discuss it. Okay, General Manager Gruber, would you introduce item 3?
On consent? You want to?
Oh, well, we don't need to, I guess. I guess we're just ready to vote. Everybody's read it? Okay. Okay, are we about? All right.
Everybody okay with 3? We'll just.
Okay, are we ready then for a motion? Okay, very good.
Madam President,
Move.
we do need to take public comment on the consent agenda just in case there is any.
Yes. Is there any public comment from anyone else then on consent agenda? All right.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're down to item 4, hearings and appeals. And so let's start then first with, I think we'll start with on this item before General Manager Gruber, would you like to introduce this, then we'll go to public comment?
Yes, Madam President and board members, it feels a little strange to only have 4 of you here, but we'll go ahead and introduce that, and then I'm going to have District Counsel Tim Carmel go ahead and present item 4A. Item 4A is a public hearing regarding adoption of Resolution 34-2015. It's a resolution of intent to draft a groundwater management plan. And with that, I'll turn it over to District Counsel Tim Carmel.
Thank you, General Manager Gruber. As you'll recall, at our meeting on the 24th of September, we discussed generally the process for adoption of a groundwater management plan pursuant to Water Code Section 10,753 at SEC. Today, we initiate that process through your consideration of a resolution of intention to draft a groundwater management plan. That's what sets the whole process in motion. You'll notice that you have a resolution with that title on it, and attached to that resolution is a document entitled How to Participate in Developing the Cambria Community Water Service District's Community Services District's Proposed Groundwater Management Plan. And that process involves what we contemplate 2 workshops that Bob Gressens will lead. And I think before that first workshop, he'll distribute a draft of the groundwater management plan. And it's a fluid process where public comment is solicited, written and oral, and those comments will be considered. Whatever modifications Bob and the board ultimately make to that plan will come back to you. It's anticipated the plan will come back on November 12th at a special meeting in which you'll be able to consider introducing an ordinance that would adopt the plan. Be glad to answer any questions. I think Bob has a short PowerPoint that goes into a little more detail with regard to the process itself and some of the components of the plan. But generally, that's what we're looking at is your consideration of this particular resolution. And you'll remember the need and what generated this item is really a term in our Prop 84 grant that says we need to have a groundwater management plan in place. So candidly, there's not a lot of discretion in terms of this particular item. We do anticipate that you'll adopt the resolution, and then we'll go about preparing a groundwater management plan. Lastly, Bob has already, because we have a fairly short time frame here, begun that process of putting together the documents and the information necessary so that once you do adopt this resolution, we'll be off to the races and hopefully have a plan ready early next week for distribution. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and I'm going
Thank
to turn it
you.
over to
I
Bob.
would like then now, at this time, to officially then have the public hearing is open. And we have a request for public comment on, okay, not on this one, sorry. Yes, Mr. Broadhurst?
I actually did intend to speak on this one, I just put the wrong number down.
See, we are on the same track then. Okay, so we have public comment then from Mike Broadhurst.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Yes, I wanted to speak today on the fact that to compliment your board and the citizens of Cambria for your foresightfulness in putting in a brackish water treatment facility, because I want to try to speak on behalf of many, certainly not all, because I don't know all of the farmers and ranchers surrounding Cambria, but many of us are very, very pleased that Cambria has chosen to develop a more robust water supply. And so I just wanted to compliment your board and to suggest that anything that you need to do to make this facility go online in a permanent way, you will have our support to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further requests for public comment on item 4, then we'll close the public hearing. And now we're going to consider the resolution.
I think Bob has a very short PowerPoint that's going to go into a little more detail on the process itself, if that's okay, Madam President.
Thank you. It is my pleasure then to call on our esteemed engineer, Gresham.
Thank
Nice
you,
to see
Madam
you.
President. And I'll emphasize the brief shortness of this PowerPoint. It's about 3 slides. So if I can get some help from the back, I'm sorry I didn't bring the clicker up here, so thank you. You can help me advance these slides. Basically, what we're talking about for a groundwater management plan meets the water code sections that Tim mentioned earlier. And it actually goes back to the Groundwater Management Act of back in 1992. So these types of plans are often called AB 3030 plans. And I mention that because per the last bullet here, it's not to be confused with the recent 2014 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which is a whole different approach on these. So we're doing probably a simpler version to meet the requirement of the Prop 84 grant at this point. We did have an earlier basin management plan from 1980, which was developed in response to permit conditions at that time. I was able to use some of the information out of that old plan, and obviously it's out of date. It doesn't have the more current facilities, including the brackish water facility in there. So that's what the draft will update, and it'll have our current operation described in there as well. So next slide, please. Again, just to touch on the points that Tim mentioned earlier, today's our initial hearing to consider the resolution of intention to draft a groundwater management plan. It's required by the water code sections. We have a description on how interested parties may participate in the plan development, which is attached to the resolution. Those copies are available today. Oops, I went over my time limit, sorry.
That's all right. You have lots of time.
We have public workshops planned next week on the 21st here at the Vets Hall, beginning at 2 p.m. Then the following week on the 29th, beginning again at 2 p.m., and I'll facilitate those, and I welcome people to attend and provide comments. We'll be posting a draft and then any subsequent updates on our website. And then we have the special board meeting planned for November 12th, beginning at 12:30 p.m. to consider an ordinance to adopt the plan. Next slide, please. So for the plan participation process, we're maintaining a list of interested parties for the noticing. We actually developed one from an earlier list that we had for EIR purposes. If people want to be added or did not receive a notice, we sent those out by email for this particular meeting. Either if they don't want to be on the list or they want to be added to the list, contact Monique on that, and just call our general office number or else email. We have Again, the draft plan will be posted on our CambriaCSD.org website. It'll also be available at our office in a hard copy form for those who want to just deal with a actual hard printout. Again, if there's comments on it, they could write to me. There's my email address at bgressens@cambriacsd.org, or else calling our general number 927-6223. Again, the workshops will allow for public comments. And then again, the November 12th meeting is planned for the ordinance adoption. I think that's it. Next slide, I think, is just questions. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So let's start with discussion, questions. Yes.
Yeah, I've got a couple of quick discussions, actually. The county has, or Mr. Gibson, via Mr. Gibson, has agreed to, if we need resources, to call on him. And I know you've been working on it for quite a while. Yeah, I got a little. And I just noticed the sustainable management plan, and I think that if we adopt this plan, I know we're going to adopt it according to the previous law, but we should look very hard at, in the following year here, in 2016, 2017, to come up with a sustainable management plan and involve as many people as possible, including the RCD, in drafting such a plan, et cetera. And so that's just a kind of a comment I have on that particular thing.
Yes, and the county staff has been helpful to date. I've been dealing mainly with the Public Works Department. Mladen Bosoff, for example, has provided me references to look up and so forth. So I got a lot of good information out of county staff already. We'll certainly be sending them a copy of the draft after this meeting so they can also review and comment. And if they want to participate further, they're certainly welcome to as their time allows. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Director Rice?
Thank you, President Robinette. This is the groundwater plan. I know we're going to see a draft of it soon. Is this cover just the San Simeon groundwater basin, or does it cover both of the basins?
It covers both basins.
Okay. And I know there's a lot of documents that we have to do in order to be eligible for state grant funding, like the Urban Water Management Plan, this particular plan. Is there, obviously, hopefully it's something that's useful for us. What would it be useful for? What would we be using it for? What is it, the implications of having one? I mean, who uses it for? Is it just that we need to have one on the shelf, or?
Sure. I didn't
Will that question be answered further? Yeah. Will that be answered further in the process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, this kind of the so what part of this thing.
Yeah. So why are we
yeah.
doing this kind of, and what's the longer term implications?
Yeah. It'll be a great guidance type document. For example, there'll be basin management objectives in there that'll kind of steer how you'll achieve a sustainable groundwater supply. And from that, recommendations would follow that might influence what type of capital facilities you want to complete to meet those objectives. So it's you know, in meeting the requirements of the water code, it kind of pushes you in that direction while emphasizing obtain as much public information and input as possible. Now, we're obviously under a lot of time pressure, and we can repeat this process again as we wish. What makes sense to me is maybe on at least a 5-year cycle to revisit it and look at doing another one. For example, we do the Urban Water Management Plan every 5 years. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense to glean whatever information comes out of the Urban Water Management Plan and put that into your next groundwater management plan update. We also do a watershed sanitary survey every 5 years. So there might be some findings in that 5-year report that could be fed into future groundwater management plan updates. And additionally, it doesn't have to stay static. If conditions change and warrant, you know, revisiting it at any time, you can open that back up. You know, we're we're treating this a little bit like how you treat an environmental document. You know, we're getting it out there in a draft form, letting people comment on it, write letters, attend meetings, and then we can redline it and show what we've done with the comments and treat it that way before adopting it in final form.
And if I might, President Robinette, just have a follow-up question?
Yes.
When we're looking at this, I know the groundwater sustainability plans are more about trying to collaborate with everybody that's within the basin. Is this similar to that, or is this basically looking at the water that we are permitted to extract from the basins, or can you kind of speak to that? Because it seems to me if it's more like the new act would require us to do, which is a completely different thing. I completely understand that part of it, which is about working with the everybody that uses that water. Is this different from that?
It's a pretty broad document as far as the planning document goes. And the Groundwater Sustainability Act of 2014 has more teeth in it, in my mind, and more, it's more proactive, where
Which is not
you
what we're
actually
doing, right?
determine what's going to be the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and then
I
you
see.
have to have that decided by a certain time frame, which I think is in a couple of years' time, and then within a couple of years after that, you have to have your plan in place. So there's a lot of scrambling going on right now, you know, particularly at the county level and in other areas of the county where they have a higher priority groundwater basin that's defined by the state, like the high and medium level priority basins. And we're considered low priority basins in our area, so very low. So we don't fall under that sustainability type
I just want to make sure that if this is a plan that
No.
we need to be working with the
Yeah.
folks that are upstream from us, that we're trying to make sure that they're,
Well, we
you know,
certainly
if
would-
they're stakeholders versus notifying them of that we're doing this for the management of the water that we're allowed to use, or so to
You know, we
speak.
certainly want to get their input. We know they're good stewards of groundwater. Their livelihoods depend on it. We're including the RCDs, or the RCD for our area in the notification list. We're including the Farm Bureau, for example. We're including our neighbors to the San Simeon well field, particularly right upstream from us and right across the road from us, in the notification list, so that they definitely are notified, as we want to have everyone's input here as much as possible.
Madam President, may I just comment? We would
Yes.
not be the lead agency on a groundwater sustainability plan, nor would we be the lead agency. I don't feel it'd be appropriate to be the lead agency on a groundwater sustainability agency or a groundwater management plan agency. So you have the act, you have the agency, then you have the plan. That would be something the county would, a much larger agency. And again, the purpose of the Groundwater Sustainability Act was to really address large groundwater basins that were in overdraft. That was the purpose of the legislation, and so that would be applicable to, let's say, Paso Robles and things like that. But as Bob had indicated, you know, we're a very low-level basin as far as the impact, and so if the county, it would be my recommendation at some point in time that if the county wants to do a groundwater sustainability plan, and be that lead agency for a larger area, that would be the appropriate agency. And we would be a signatory to that and be a part of it and provide them information. But our basin's very confined and very small, and it hasn't been designated nor identified as a county as a high priority basin in any kind of overdraft. So,
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, do we have a motion?
I move that we adopt the Resolution 34-2015, a resolution of intention to draft a groundwater management plan.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 3415. And even though there's only 4 of us, I guess because this is important, we'll have a roll call vote.
Director Berger?
Aye.
Director Thompson? Director Rice?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. Okay, motion passes unanimously, 4-0.
Can I make one?
Yes, Director
Thank you. One
Barringer.
comment, because we actually did mention somewhere in this that a workshop may be held on October 29th, 2015. It might be wise for us all to address rates at that particular thing. I know that's not on the agenda, but the date isn't mentioned. So that's a comment mainly to the president that there might be something that we can do on that same date to be efficient with this.
Okay, and on this one, and I know you had other plans and needed to reschedule, as soon as you have a confirmation on all the moving parts on that one and are ready to go, let me know and we'll make sure it's there. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, this can't be possible. Are we now to item 5, which appears to be the final item today. General Manager Gruber, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, Madam President, board members, I'll introduce it, and then District Council Tim Carmel will go ahead and brief the board on the process that's before you as part of Agenda Item 5A. And Agenda Item 5A is discussion and consideration of procedures to fill the vacancy of the CCSD Board of Directors created by the resignation of Merle Clift. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thank you. At our September 24th meeting, you'll remember that Merle Clift submitted his resignation, which was effective on October 1st.
Still in shock, yes.
Happened pretty quickly. Government Code Section 1780 is the regulation that explains how you fill a vacancy on a Community Services District Board of Directors. There is no specific procedure that's outlined. They give you two options. One is to appoint, and the other is to call an election. Usually you appoint because it's more expedient and less costly, and that's, I think, the direction that we're going here. In terms of an actual process, there is no delineated process as to what you've used to select someone to fill that seat. The only requirement is that you post a notice of vacancy within 15 days of the vacancy, which staff did on the 2nd of October. I know we've got, I don't know how many, but we've had several applications that have been submitted. But the purpose of today's agenda item is for you to discuss and establish a procedure that you'll utilize on Monday, this coming Monday, the 19th, which we have another special meeting, and you'll essentially establish the process you'll use to select an applicant to fill that vacancy.
Thank you. And I want to also ask, because we're talking procedure here today, just so we're all feeling comfortable with how we're going to approach this. And so I'm wondering, do we need an actual motion, or what did you have in mind?
No, I don't think we need, if there's consensus, which can be difficult to establish, but if there's consensus as to how you want to move this forward, we won't need an actual motion. If there's a desire to make a motion, that's certainly acceptable.
Okay,
but as long as everyone is in general agreement, or at least 3 of you, that'll be satisfactory. And I think staff will know if we've hit that consensus level, and if not, we'll probably say to you, we need a motion.
Okay, thank you. And General Manager Gruber?
And Madam President, we just, we want the board to know that staff is very supportive of this process, and we're here to support you. And as the deliberation goes on today, we would like to, Monique's got the schedule of all the plethora of meetings we have in front of us in the next till between now and November 19th. So as part of the dialogue goes on, we'd also like to discuss, okay, if we do this, then we have, there's a very narrow time frame to accomplish all this, so we want to make sure that we facilitate and support you guys as much as we can in the process. So if it looks like Monique can't pull this off for some reason, I'm going to look over to her, and I'm sure she can. But part of the deliberation today is about questions and, to the candidates and things like that. And then there's that distribution of the packet prior to them being interviewed by the full board. So we're fairly confident that whatever you decide today, we plan on working this weekend and meeting those requirements. So we just wanted to let you know that we're on a pretty tight time schedule, and so a really clear direction from you guys today would be extremely helpful.
Thank you. And that's what I had in mind when I asked for this to be put on the agenda today, is just for all of us to have a discussion so that we feel comfortable, we've had input. But it's really procedural today. It's, looking at the need to make sure if we each submit questions, how many, and not to have overlap in the questions because we will need to make sure we're not asking the same question because it wouldn't make sense with the, with the interview that day. So I'll share with you just kind of a baseline to start with. You can build on it. You can recommend other things. You can say, no, that makes sense. So this is kind of, when I asked for this, what I had in mind. And that is, when we have the candidates here, of course, I was the last person actually selected by the board in the same kind of setting with, and that was 2011. It would seem that we would want to have the interviews with everyone here together. And last time we did have them sitting, there were six last time, sitting here, and the board was here, just like now. But I think that we want to talk about, once we're ready to go, I would like to propose that we have some kind of structure, though, where we have numbers to identify the positions that should be answering, and that we also are clear on how we ask. I would suggest we ask the question that we submitted ourselves, and then we should rotate with the actual candidates so that we don't have the same person always answering the first question first. And so I would think we want to balance it to make it fair for everyone. So my suggestion with that background is that we would welcome everyone, and I would start with explaining the process, how it's going to work. And then the introductory question, I would like to frame a question that each person answers that's going to be more general than probably the rest of the questions. And then I don't know if you think we should each submit 2 or if we should submit 1. If we have 2, then obviously we're going to have 8 questions for the candidates, and I think that's a lot. Or we may decide to go with 4 questions, and if we do, however we do it, I'm thinking to be random is going to be the most fair way to do this. So if we were to have 4 questions and we were each going to ask, you'd think we'd know the answer, of course. We're each going to ask our question. Again, we would do it randomly. So if the candidates were, for example, let's say there were, I don't know, and I don't know, but let's say there were 4 to keep it simple, 1, 2, 3, 4, they would have their number in front of that candidate. And then let's say that we draw numbers to see who's going to go first on the rotation. And let's say that Director Thompson happens to draw out of the numbers 1. Then he'll start, and let's say that Director Barringer, you're 2 because you drew 2. You may have drawn 3, or I did. And we would then continue in that same order to ask, to ask our questions. And then whoever answers the question first here, let's say that the lowest number that had number 1 was in the 3rd position. I would see us starting with that person and rotate left to right around. And then on the next one, we would go to the next person that was on this side and continue on, so we rotate. When I did this, it seemed to me, and maybe you remember, it seemed to me that I wound up answering all the questions first.
I
certainly did.
think what happened was I think each candidate was interviewed, each applicant was interviewed individually. So you did your entire interview. The
whole
board
thing.
asked
That's-
you all of yours, and then you finished yours.
Thank you, because I was exhausted,
And then,
I know that.
and then they asked somebody else theirs. And so it
whole
wasn't
thing.
like we did it like a debate style. I think it was
Yeah.
more of like an interview where you do one
But it
person
was-
at a time so that you get the full picture of the person all together at
Yeah.
once. Because I
And
think
you
I
can-
might get confused if we go more debate style in a way.
Well, I don't know. Having been the candidate last time, I can remember there were several questions. And it's also a different, I think there's somewhat of a disadvantage in that the entire group has heard what you said. They may just use it because they didn't even know the answer or build on it. But I think it's kind of more fair if each person gets a turn to go first. So that's just my
Didn't we
thought.
do an opening statement too, I believe?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I would like to give them a prompt to respond to first before we actually got into the questions.
Oh, you mean just kind of an opening statement?
Just an open statement.
Did you envision the candidates having the questions ahead of time?
We didn't.
I think it's a consideration.
I mean, we're not trying to surprise them with the
Are we
question,
trying to
but-
limit them to a certain length of time to respond?
No, we didn't have a time limit before.
So overall, I think it's well thought out. I like the idea of a single question from each director, and perhaps Monique can be the triage person. If she needs a different question from somebody because it's too close, she could inquire and get a different question. I would also like to add, after all of the questions have been submitted, to be able to ask an additional question if one wants, kind of a tiebreaker or something that each director could ask another question maybe to an individual. I think either for clarification or whatever. So if I suggest that if we do have 4 questions, that the candidates get a chance to see those official questions, and then we all can ask an additional question, kind of impromptu, based upon their response. It's a thought, and I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I kind of like that too, but also I think it'd be good to set a 3-minute limit on the response, as much as we do with public comment, so that we keep it rolling along, and yeah, so I think it.
Okay, so 3 minutes on each response. And so everyone thinks that we should send these out to the candidates?
I don't know, it's just a question. What do you think?
I don't know about that. Again, you and I had to have done our homework well before we got here.
And I don't think that we need to be asking them questions that are fact-based that necessarily have a correct answer, as much as asking them about how they would approach being a board member, more of open-ended kinds of questions. So rather than a test,
All right.
Yeah.
kind
to
of
that.
more
Yeah,
to
it's
find
not a
out if
fact thing,
they
it's-
would be.
yeah.
I mean, when you have an election, then you definitely want to know who's got the knowledge of what's going on. We definitely want that here too, but it seems to me if we're looking for somebody to be able to work with the board and we're doing it more of an interview process for the appointment, what we're looking for is what do you think vision of Cambria,
Yeah.
that kind, what do you
Really what
picture
they
Cambria, future of Cambria being, or what's your
Exactly.
role, what do you think the role is of a board member? Something that doesn't necessarily have a correct answer so much as just gets to the point of what they're,
And that was,
thinking
that's
about
exactly
the role.
what I was picturing too, that it's more an open-ended kind of response. So are we feeling?
I think if we had 2 main kind of or even 3 main open-ended questions, I don't necessarily need to have my own question, except perhaps maybe a follow-up once we heard the answer, their opening statements, and then maybe there would be something that we would hear that they would say that we would want to get further clarification on.
Yeah, I think I'm
I'm
kinda
just
hearing it.
thinking when I'm hearing answers, I might think, oh, well, what do you mean by that? And
Right,
that
but
kind
rather,
of-
I think rather than, and again, I'm trying to follow what President Robinette was saying. Each person, I like the idea of rotating. It makes sense. I like the idea of each person answering the same question first, then another question second, and so on and so forth, without interaction or debate from the board. After those,
would agree.
that first round is complete, and I also like the idea of a 3-minute limit.
That's a good
I
idea.
don't think we have to put them on a buzzer, but I mean, the candidates should know that they have about 3 minutes to answer any given question. They can answer it in two words, as far as I'm concerned. And then after that, we then, based upon the numbers we drew, would have a follow-up question, not necessarily to each person, but to a candidate or two that we want clarification on or additional information from.
Could or not, right?
Yeah,
pass.
could or not, or just
Could or
pass.
not, leave it kind of open.
I mean, if 2 people have differing opinions and you want to kind of understand where they're coming from or whatever, for each person to have each director to have one short follow-up question for everybody, and then by that time, I think we'll have a consensus.
I like the flexibility.
And I don't think we need to put the questions out, especially if those questions are fairly general.
Yeah.
I think the candidates should be able to respond impromptu.
Yeah, this is part of what we want to find out, just how involved at this point have they been? Are they, kind of following things? So,
President,
well, one other thing I was going to say too, before I forget on this one. The other thing is to just on the tables and the setup logistically, last time we had just a lavalier mic that we passed along. So we're going to have some way that, because we don't want them standing up and coming up here to talk. They need to stay at the table, and there needs to be a couple of mics so they're good.
And as far as staff participation, I mean, all you have to do is have the names and the facility available. It's not like a staff report or anything.
but we do have their applications, right? Because
Yes,
the
yes, we
deadline
do.
was today at 4.
And just as a point of clarification, Madam President and Board, are you going to provide, I have 3 questions here. Are you going to provide the questions in advance? And then number 2, if so, do you want those questions distributed as part of their packet prior to the board meeting? Or number 3, do you just want to have more of a casual environment as far as the questions go?
I think on the questions, again, it's what we think, but I do think whatever our questions are, and we can do this any way you want, but I think we do have to see our 4 questions. And because let's say that there are 2 questions that are so close to being exactly the same that it would be awkward for somebody to get out here and you've got essentially the same question you're going to ask.
Could I suggest we do that via email? In other words,
Sure.
I didn't submit a question because I really wanted to have this process vetted out first.
Well-
If we all submit a question or 2, and Monique via email determines that these 2 are kind of close, do you want clarification? By the time we get here, we'll know what each person's question is going to be.
I kind of already know what I might be asking, and I'm okay with going over that right now, what I would like to hear. So are you thinking opening statement?
No, I don't. I don't have it even with me because I wasn't going to talk content here.
Right.
This was just legislation.
And I'm not ready to discuss a
Okay,
question.
then let me give my input about the way that I think the structure that might be most helpful, at least to me. It might be good to have an opening statement wherein they were to address something like, what's your vision for Cambria? And that gives them an opportunity to speak to who they are, why they want to be on the board, and whatever way that they want to do that. And then we can have 3 questions. I don't need to submit a question as long as I'm getting from them what they think, what their
And
vision
that
is for
overall kind of
Cambria.
question I'm going to tell you is very, very close to what I thought I would start with. And so then I think, we'll hear that as kind of getting a sense of why they're even here.
Correct.
And then we get, hopefully, the 4 questions, because it actually turns out to be 5, because it's like an opening, kind of getting acquainted. Then there's 4 of us, so we have 4 questions. I imagine the rest of our questions, while they won't be a yes or no kind of response, would get more into the work and the challenges all the time that we're dealing with and kind of hearing their perspective on those things. So back to when do we see the questions? And I think we have to send them to Monique. Could we have them to her tomorrow, maybe by midday? So if we see that there's 2 almost identical, we can
I
get
can
back.
get
But how are we
to-
going to do that without violating the Brown Act? Because we can't
I
be
think
doing that
she,
outside of
It's a
the-
one-way,
Actually,
it's a one-way
Okay.
communication
it's
to
a one-way
Monique.
thing.
I just want to try and be
But
open and
As
understand we're doing it
president,
right.
is it acceptable that Monique, if she has 2 that are alike or practically alike, could call me and say these, or she should maybe just call the 2 people? Well, maybe she wants my opinion, do I think they really are alike or
Right,
not?
right.
Did you hear that?
What's Mr. Carmel's?
If there's a duplicate, you'll send your questions to Monique. If she sees a duplication, then I guess whoever submitted first will get their question, and the other person she'll notify and say you need to change your question.
But we were just saying, if you see something you think's almost a duplicate, then let me see them, and I can work with you on who. I would say you would give it back to both people. I'm not sure.
Madam President, if I
His
will
suggestion.
too, this is where the timing comes in because we're finalizing the
Running out of
agenda for the 22nd tomorrow. And we essentially have 3 board meetings, so
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of time tomorrow, because we're
Yeah.
putting the agenda together, unless you want the agenda on Monday, which is fine with me. But just the back and forth, so if we could get it done and,
Yeah, could, I.
oh,
I
and the
have-
19th agenda we're still dealing with. So we're
Right.
dealing with multiple board meetings and multiple agendas, and
Yeah.
so we want to knock it out of the park today before we leave here and get a clear direction, because we
Are
don't.
we interviewing and appointing on the 19th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have my questions in. Who else has their questions in?
2 of the 4 have the questions in right
Two of the
now.
4.
And I can tell you what mine's going to be.
Could you get them to Monique maybe almost as you're
Well, you
leaving
wanted- yeah.
today?
Okay, how about this? Since
Yeah, you
I'm not
wanted it-
ready,
and
why don't
Director
you?
Berenger, yeah.
If you tell us what your question is, and those two are in, Monique can send me all the questions, and I'll give one that isn't a duplicate.
I think the way this is going to work is you're going to submit your questions to Monique. You'll each have a question. They're not going to be submitted with the packet. They're just going to be returned to you, and if there's a duplication,
Yeah.
she's going to tell you need to change your question because it's already been taken.
Because if you were to get all the questions, it becomes almost the Brown Act thing.
It does.
It is.
But if we
Brown
were to
Act.
talk about it here at the meeting,
That's fine, but it's not actually set up
I see.
for that.
Yeah, and, okay, yeah. Good.
So have
we're
we
concluded.
given enough direction for us to feel, I mean,
When-
you know,
when, we're-
this is, we got a lot of time. It's next Monday.
If you get your question in, I can promise to get my question in by this evening.
Yeah,
And so Monique in the morning will have all the questions, and it's either a moot point or somebody
They're all quite
will be
different,
directed
or
to get another one.
Something's kind of close, and
Right.
then we'll have to get back to those two people, not together to share, but
And once determined, she can send the questions to us, and we'll know ahead of time. All of us will know ahead of time what the questions were. That's not a Brown Act.
Well, do you
because we
want to do
can't
it that
change.
way? Though I think the way this was envisioned was you'll each have your question and you'll submit it to her, and you'll be asking that
We won't
question
have
unless
the
you,
full set.
unless you hear back from her that
All
your
right.
question needs to be modified.
Excellent. Okay, good.
okay?
You have a question.
General Manager Gruber has a question.
Yes, ma'am. Would the board like to see the applications prior to the 19th so you can review them this weekend?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, so
tomorrow?
what we'll do is kind of give you a package, and along with the agenda and the questions, and that'll be a packet for you to review this weekend. And so you'll be familiar with the candidates and their background and their interest statements associated with the application itself. And I think that'd be helpful to you guys, don't you?
Indeed.
Okay.
That was actually what I was going to ask.
Yeah, good.
I-
You'll get 2 packets tomorrow.
Do you have a question? Oh. So we want the questions out to the board, all of them? I thought we just said no.
No, we
No.
don't. That's not what we envisioned. The
No,
board-
not
You'll each have
me
your
either.
own questions, and the other people.
That's all you have. You can see the packets. We're going to get a copy of their applications, but the full set of questions stays with Monique.
Right.
All right?
Wow. I almost feel more nervous because I don't know the questions than probably the applicants might. But I'm just curious on the, if I might, President Robinette, on this application from when Murrow was appointed, there was a set of references. Do we have that on the application that we got in? I didn't see I didn't go and look at the
We did
current
not.
application. The one that the applicants have just turned in, that the deadline just passed. Did they provide references to us? Did they? On the application?
I believe they did not, and
I don't
think they
I don't believe that was part of the application. I think
Okay.
2 of the questions that resonate in my mind were, are you a resident of Cambria? Number one.
That would be
and
an
are you a
important one.
Are you a registered voter?
Yeah.
And so those, but I don't recall, Director Rice, that there was references. I'm pretty sure there was not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we're good then. And Monique, you or Tim or whoever, do you feel that you've got direction on how we're going to get set up?
Should we attempt to go over it just to make sure?
All
Yes,
right.
please.
Sure.
Okay, Monique.
Go ahead.
I can try, but please correct me, because, so each board member will be asking one question, and we just went through the process by which you're going to submit your questions to make
Except
sure.
I'm asking the first question, which is not part of the each. Okay.
Fine.
So there's actually 5.
Okay, so there's a preliminary question from the president, and then you'll each have a subsequent question. Each candidate will get a number, and I suspect we'll pick those numbers out of hats?
Yeah, we'll have them just
Just pick out of a hat? Okay, and that's to determine the sequence by which they're going to be answering the first question, because at that point it rotates from left to right. Okay, 3 minutes for each response. Okay, and that's for the first round. The second round are optional questions, at least that's what I heard. Each board member will get an opportunity for an optional question or a clarification
I
question.
thought it was follow-up. If they wanted to have, if somebody wanted somebody to expand a little bit, what do you, how did you hear that?
That wasn't my intent, but I'm open for anything. My intent was that it doesn't become, after they answer their question, there's no follow-up. I don't want clarification then. After everybody's answered all of their questions, I would like to be able to, as in an interview, be able to address one or two or none for clarification on even another point if I wanted to.
And would that be with everyone again?
No. Each director would have an opportunity to
No, I
ask or
mean
not ask.
with the whole set of interviews. So you might have, let's say, whoever person number 2 is, you're still kind of wondering what they meant exactly, and after
Or I'd
we're
like to
all
ask them
finished,
another
you'd
question.
Yeah, you wanted to get a little more
Yeah,
information
a
on
little
their
more
thinking
information,
on
yeah.
that?
And each
On the same
director has an
topic.
option to do that.
On the same topic.
Well, why not? Why restrict it to a different topic? Why?
What? I'm sorry.
Why restrict it to the same topic?
Well, then you need to ask all the candidates again the same question.
I don't know about that.
Well,
That's up
and
to you.
that's kind of why I was thinking that doing, each candidate gets their 5-10 minutes total, and then you move to the next candidate rather than rotating through them.
No, well, the trouble with that is then one candidate has given information to each other candidate.
That's
So when
how I
you're
felt last time.
you get all the information everybody else said. You can read
And
body
you- and-
language.
yeah.
It's not the right.
Yeah.
It's no.
Okay.
I don't care for that either. I would agree
Okay.
with you, Director Barringer.
Okay.
And I
Well, maybe-
understand the reasoning there.
Okay.
But maybe that's just why the first question is going to be kind of a general question that allows them to make kind of an opening statement.
Yes,
Right.
more like that.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
that's how we'll start. Okay, then I think that we've given you feel okay now about the direction, and we're ready.
Everyone's comfortable with the procedure that we just
Can
went
we
over?
can we talk about what the procedure is following the questioning?
You mean
What
how
do you
you're going to
mean?
actually
Do we discuss?
deliberate? How you're going to deliberate,
Yes.
Yes.
if you'd like?
Yes,
What do you
please.
mean?
Like what's going to happen after we ask the questions? Then what
All
happens? We
through?
deliberate.
Someone's going to have
Well,
to
we're gonna
nominate
do-
and...
And then somebody
somebody's gonna
nominates?
make a motion.
and you
Okay.
may- Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
deliberate though.
I know it seems obvious, but I just want to be clear.
Okay.
No, I think these are good things. We do not want to be doing this next Monday.
No,
It-
indeed.
If there-
So,
If there's a need for discussion for some reason, certainly you can talk.
so at the end, we could ask for discussion, but ultimately I'm going toward a motion. Okay?
I would like short discussion before a motion comes out, so somebody just doesn't jump out and move
That's-
right away.
that's what I
I'd like
think.
to have a little bit of discussion and then
Yeah, when we're
ask for a
finished
motion.
and we're satisfied we have the information, then I'll call for discussion if anybody has something to say. Otherwise, we'll be looking for a motion.
And on the vote, is it a 3-1 vote or is it a 4-0 vote for the?
As in everything in Community Services District world, it requires 3 votes.
It's not, because I noticed in the bylaws, which we changed our bylaws to not have these procedures in there, it said 2/3 of the,
It's one of
I
the
don't know
rea-
how you make 2/3 of 4, but,
It's one of the reasons we
You've got a
took that
partial
out.
person going then.
No,
Yeah,
it's
right?
it's just 3 votes.
okay. I just want to make, like I said, I just want to make sure the procedure is
Yeah.
clear.
It would have to be a majority. Yeah.
Of course, a majority. I didn't know if it had to be unanimous or not.
No, I don't think so. We could be here till midnight. It's hard to know.
Oh,
Or right away, could be done.
yeah, you never know. You never know.
Okay, I think then this concludes our meeting for this afternoon. I don't think we have any further business, do we, General Manager Gruber?
No, Madam President, we do not.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Is this a record? Under 1 hour?